I thought it was the most boring book I've ever read. Oh my gosh, I told you the wrong name and I hated it. I quite frankly hated this book. I don't know where my book, hold on, prepared. This sounds like such a good premise. I'm so excited for all the fun. Now, hi friends and welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a little bit of a longer wrap up because again, I read a good bit of books this month. I got 18 books read this month and I'm super excited about it. I'm trying to keep up the pace. Some of these were short stories, some of these were cozy and just some shorter reads, so that did help me. But overall, I did get some good lengthy books in there and I'm really excited because I did stick to my TBR as best as I could. I got almost all that was on my TBR except for like a couple because I just ran out of time. And then I threw in some extras that I didn't have on my TBR that I just felt like reading. And so I'm super excited to share all that with you. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Favorites. And the reason I want to just get this out of the way is because I did not enjoy this book. I gave it 1 star. I did finish it. It was for a book club. Otherwise, I would have DNF'd it. This was not the book for me. I know that a lot of people love this, and since our discussion, I have realized that this book, I really just went in not really with the right expectations. I did expect it to be toxic because I had heard that, but I just really didn't know exactly what type of genre this was supposed to be, I guess. I feel like this book is heavily like mismarketed. It does label general fiction in some areas, but I still think in a lot of ways it's very mismarketed as a romance and very misleading. Even in the description, I think her description leans too much towards pointing towards a romance. And I just think that that could have been a better description to kind of give us an idea that this was more of like a general fiction / mystery thriller, and it was not a romance because this story is not a love story. There is a couple in there, but honestly, I didn't feel the passion. I did not feel the passion with any of them whatsoever. I did not feel the passion with the ice skating. I didn't feel like there was a lot about the ice skating. I didn't feel the tension during the shows that they did. I didn't feel hardly anything in this book for a book that's supposed to be so toxic and just get your blood pumping with like the competition and the high stakes with how it's supposed to be in Olympic training. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like the author conveyed what she was trying to do very well. I think for me, she spent a lot of time trying to make this more than one genre. And I think it shows. I think that she was trying to do too many things at once and didn't do any one thing well. And I hated it. I quite frankly hated this book. I thought it was the most boring book I've ever read. I did not hate this book because of the romance and the trope that I despise. I hated this book because it was boring. I didn't believe anything. I didn't feel their chemistry. I didn't feel the chemistry with the ice skating. I didn't feel the friendship chemistry. None of it. And so it just completely fell flat for me. I will say when I went into this, I did not realize it was supposed to be a Wuthering Heights retelling. Maybe that would have helped, maybe not, probably not. I just thought it was boring. So that's the worst one. Get that out of the way. So moving forward to more positive things. I'm kind of going out of order here, but I'm just gonna go with the way that it's listed on here. I read My Phony Valentine this month. I gave this 4 stars. This is by Courtney Walsh and it is her Valentine's themed rom-com and it is absolutely adorable. It is a clean, closed-door romance and one that I think is perfect if you are looking for rom-coms like that. It's just very sweet and I don't believe there was any cussing or language in it either, so that was nice and I just thought it was really cute. The only thing that held me back from giving this 5 stars was just that I think that the characters were immature in some ways, and specifically the female main character I feel had some moments that were really, really immature to me and just didn't reflect on someone that's supposed to be around like 30-ish in age. So I just had a little bit of disconnect with that. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. There were so many sweet quotes that I loved and just some deep moments that I really enjoyed. And so just a little bit about the premise is he is a famous hockey player and she owns a kitchen or a cafe of some sort, a restaurant. And so they meet and end up, by a set of circumstances, fake dating. And it is such a cute way that they just learn to get to know each other and learn to like each other. And I really recommend it. So I do plan on reading the sequel, which is My Lucky Charm, this month. The next book that I have on here is The Games God Play. I gave this 3.5 stars, and this was for Spark of Sam's book club pick. I did enjoy this overall, but for me, again, I felt like there was no chemistry in this romance, and I also felt it was rushed. So there was just a little bit of disconnect for me with the two main characters. I really did not feel the passion. I really did not feel that she gave us enough time to really get to know them. I just think because it was a competition setting, I didn't have enough time to really care about specifically the male main character. I just didn't really care about him and felt it was just a little bit bland in some points. But essentially, this is a bunch of gods who get together and do this competition every year, and they nominate a mortal to be in their place. And it takes place in the beginning where Hades meets a girl and for the first time in all of the years decides that he's going to enter when he normally doesn't, and he picks her, and it just goes from there. The competition part of it, I will say, is really entertaining, and I really did enjoy that the most. It was really just the romance that I wasn't loving. So, still a good read. I still would recommend it. 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was Magnolia Parks. This I also gave 3 stars, and I have a whole reading blog on that, so I'm not going to go into detail about this, but I am going to link this below, the video of the reading blog, because I talk in depth about it. Overall, I think that a 3-star for this one, I was being generous. I do think if I had just picked this up randomly and didn't know what was going into, I probably would have rated it lower. However, I did know that this was going to be a toxic romance. I did know that it wasn't really going to be a fleshed out happy ending. And I did know that I was going to probably be frustrated, which is exactly what ended up happening. But I'm interested enough in these characters that I want to continue. So solid 3 stars for me. The next book that I read was Dim Sum of All Fears. This is the second book in the Noodle Shop Mystery series, and I also gave this 3 stars. It is following the same characters, but obviously with a different murder happening. I'm not positive that I'm going to continue this series because I do think that it is a little bit childish in some places. The female main character is not my favorite and can be a little bit whiny, and it is a little bit soap opera-y at times. So I don't know, we'll see. I am going to try one more. I'm going to read the 3rd in the series. If I still feel the same way, I'm probably just not going to continue because it is such a large series. I think there's at least 12 books or so, and I just really don't want to continue if I'm feeling mid about a series. So I will let you guys know when I read the next one this month what I think. The next book that I read was a novel love story, and this is by Ashley Poston. This is one, I think it's her 3rd or her 4th rom-com that she's written in the adult fiction. And again, it is magical realism. And this is following Elsie, who travels through this town and ends up in a fairy tale town inside of basically one of her favorite stories. And she ends up just kind of exploring throughout this, and there's a little bit of romance in here. And I do think that this book is specifically not supposed to be a romance. I feel like it is a little misguided in the fact that this advertises as a rom-com. I would say this is more a cozy fantasy, and if you go in with this expectations, I think you might really enjoy it. There are some beautiful quotes in it and really great writing, but for me, this was not Ashley Poston's best. I gave it 3 stars because, again, I did think it was good, but I feel like it was just mid for me. And I was disappointed in this one because I really do love her rom-coms, but I really didn't feel the romance a whole lot. The first half, I just didn't like at all, but then the second half I was enjoying. So I think that this book is just a little bit disjointed for me, and I just wish that she had really kind of fleshed it out a little bit better. The next story that I read was Variation by Rebecca Yarros. Again, this is not my greatest reading month, guys. This is another 3-star for me, and I'm really disappointed because I was so excited about reading this one. I have seen nothing but great reviews for this one, and I was really excited to try another Rebecca Yarros because I have only read her Fourth Wing series, and obviously that's one of my favorites, so I wanted to read more from her. But unfortunately, I was really bored for a majority of this book. I went in and I was super excited about the premise because it is following a guy who is in the Coast Guard, and the female main character is a ballerina. And so to me, that is such a cool concept to put those two together. And I really do still enjoy like that idea. But for me, I think that it needed to have some more of the military in it. In this one, there really wasn't any at all. And it was almost all ballerina, which is fine. And if you are a dancer, you would probably really enjoy it. But for me, I just felt that those parts were really boring to me, unfortunately. And so I really just lost interest for more than half the story. So a 3-star overall. It had a good ending, and I do think that there were moments that were beautiful, but it was just not the best. So the next book that I read was The Last One at the Wedding. And this book is really funny because this was a buddy read pick for X's and O's readathon with Jessie. And we did a discussion on this, and the majority of people really did not enjoy this book. This book is, again, another very misleading book, and I really thought I was going into a funny story. I didn't think that it was going to be a rom-com because on the back, it leads you to believe that this guy has stood up all of these women. So I knew going in, this is not going to be this sweet rom-com. However, I did think it was going to be really funny, and I was expecting this to be a light rom-com-y style of book where all these women get together and get back at this guy. And I was like, this sounds like such a good premise. I'm so excited for all the fun. No, that was not this book, and I can't really get into it more than that because there are major spoilers and plot twists that you were just not going to expect. And the majority of the book, I felt I didn't understand what was happening. There were so many characters, you were following so many people, and I was really confused for the majority of the time until about 70-80%. Then you're not confused, but you're like, what? It almost felt like a thriller mixed in. So I don't know. I didn't like this one, guys. I gave this 2 stars, and that may even be generous because it was just not great. The next book that I read was The Match, and finally we can talk about a good one because you guys know that Sarah Adams never lets me down. I gave her 5 stars for this book, and I was so shocked only because this is her backlist. And so I was really going in with low expectations because I know, writing has improved just naturally with authors. Their first few books are probably not going to be their greatest. But no, I loved this. Was it cheesy? Yes. Could I tell this was in her earlier years? Yes. However, I ate this story up. This story is following Evie Jones and Jacob Broden. And Evie is a worker. I don't know if it's like a nonprofit organization. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but she works for a service dog company. And basically these service dogs, she meets the family and she interviews them and she kind of figures out what their needs are, etc. So she is looking into this family whose little girl has epilepsy just like her and is trying to see if a service dog would be of use to this family. And this is how she meets Jacob, who is a single dad of a girl who has epilepsy. And the reason I love this story so much was honestly the epilepsy and the dogs. I feel like That storyline with this romance was just so beautiful and so interesting and different for me. I think that it really just added a lot of depth to a rom-com, but also still remaining light. I loved the main male character in this book. I thought that he was just the sweetest, loving dad. And now I'm obsessed with the single dad trope. I loved Evie though. The reason I loved this the most was Evie. She is probably one of my top female main characters in rom-coms ever now. Like one of my top. I absolutely adored her character. I thought that she was just such a compassionate and caring person, and stepping into the role of taking care of a potential stepdaughter is a really huge deal. And I just think that she did such a great job with really making her feel seen and just being there and relating to her because they both had epilepsy. I really, really loved this one so much, and I'm so excited because tonight will be the discussion on Hannah's book club, and we will be discussing this because it was for her Comfy Cozy book club pick, and I am so stoked for it. I cannot wait. The next book that I read was The Worst Wingman Ever, and this was by none other than Abby Jimenez, and I will go ahead and lump in the fall risk for this one. I am not going to go into huge detail because I did already post a video on this, which would have been posted by the time this video comes out, so I will link that below if you would like a full review on these two short stories. But I loved them. I gave them both 5 stars. I ate them up. They are the perfect Valentine's reads, but honestly, you could read them at any time. They do center around Valentine's Day though, and I just adore them so much. Abby Jimenez can almost do no wrong, honestly. So I highly recommend them. Again, I will link below, but you should definitely check that video out to get more of the premise and the backstory in that one. The next book that I read was Nightmare Virus, and I read this on a whim for Elisa's book club. And it is a Christian allegory thriller slash sci-fi slash fantasy. There are so many genres I feel like that were mixed in this book, which made it a little bit messy. I really thought the premise of this was really cool because essentially there is a nightmare virus that is going around and people are dying and it's just taking over the world, and you are basically trapped in a nightmare. Like you will just fall asleep and you cannot wake up, and then you are in this other world trapped within your nightmares, and it is really crazy. I thought the premise of this sounded super creepy and I was really intrigued, but unfortunately it fell a little flat for me. I just don't think that it was thrilling enough. I don't think there was enough action. I don't feel like it was fleshed out good enough. I just think, again, this is another story where the author is trying to do too many things at once and it just kind of made it fall flat. I did give it 3 stars. I think overall the message is a 5-star, like the message behind it and what they're trying to convey, but the story is a 3-star because I just don't think they quite got there with the story being fleshed out. The next book that I read was The No-Show, and I gave this 2 stars. Why can I not remember what The No-Show is? Oh my gosh, I told you the wrong name. When I was talking about it earlier, I told you the wrong name. I was trying to say The No-Show about the supposed rom-com, and I skipped over the last one at the way. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, let's go back. The last one, At the Wedding, I read this one towards the beginning of the month, and this was one of my TBR picks. I gave this 2 stars. This was just boring. I did not think this thriller was very thrilling. The story was just meh. Like, I just didn't care. Basically, his daughter is calling him up and telling him, hey, I'm about to get married to this really rich guy. And the dad starts to sort of put some puzzle pieces together and realize that this guy doesn't seem like he is very normal. And his daughter is not concerned, so he's really just trying to put his own clues together, but he's trying to be sensitive to the fact that him and his daughter had recently had a falling out, and so he doesn't want to make her upset. So at their wedding, he is still putting pieces together and trying to figure out, is this guy someone that my daughter should marry? And it is taking place, I believe, at a summer camp. It's like a summer camp wedding. Again, didn't love this one. Don't recommend it. I think that it was boring. So 2 stars. The next book that I read was Booked for Murder, and this is another cozy mystery. I gave this 3.5 stars. I actually thought this was a pretty good one for the fact that it wasn't a food cozy, and typically I really only like those. I just think that subject matter is more interesting, but this one was following a girl who inherits a bookshop, and I really liked it. I thought it was really cute. I thought the story was really interesting. I think that it had some deeper themes in it that were more interesting, and so I do recommend it, and I read this as an ARC, although it is out now, and I do recommend it. So it was a really good cozy. The next book that I read was, I'll go ahead and go over this one, but this book is for my book club, which I will probably have to wait and post this video after my discussion because I am keeping my rating a secret until then. But this is a historical fiction that is following 3 or 4 women. I forget how many. I think it's 3, maybe 4 women who is like a travel library, and they have pack horses, and it's a library through Eleanor Roosevelt, and they basically travel around to deliver books to people. And through this story, you are following these characters and their lives and the struggles that they go through as women in this time period, and in marriages and relationships, and what was really just frowned upon during that time. And it is an emotional read. It does have triggers in this. I would say DA, light themes of that in here, and there is a little bit of spice in it. It's closed door, but it is in there, which I was not really expecting in here, but I just thought this was okay. I'm disappointed because I was really excited for this book, but I think for me, I like my historical fictions to have more of a high stake type of story, like World War II or during the Civil War period. I don't really love books about books for some reason. This is just not my type of subject matter. That's why I was really surprised by the cozy I just mentioned, because I just don't typically like books about books. I just think that's boring. I think that's a really boring subject matter. I love to read, but like, I don't see the point in reading about reading. For some reason, my mind is just like, huh? And I don't know. It does not keep my interest. It just doesn't. So that is the reason for the 3 stars. I do think this is still a beautiful story. I do recommend it. I do think overall it is good. But again, it was just okay for me because it's not my type of historical fiction. But if you love to learn about like libraries and bookshops and how those came to be, and then also having to get knowledge and stuff in that time for women was really hard because men just didn't really feel like women needed to learn, then this would be a good one for you to look at because it does follow those struggles that women really had to go through. And so it was good. It was good, but not my favorite. The next book that I read was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. I also have an entire review vlog on this, so I will not go into heavy detail about this, but this is an ARC. It has been released since I posted the review, and I highly recommend this book. It has major grief triggers, so do not go into this reading it if you have some issues with that or if you've recently lost someone. It is very raw. It also has major cancer triggers, so I highly caution you going into this one, but it is an absolutely beautiful and emotional story, and I highly recommend it. Again, I gave this 5 stars. I went into it not really sure I was going to love it, ended up being totally shocked about how much I loved it by the end, and I have a whole video that I will link below on it because it was so good that it has moved to one of my top romances ever now. So definitely a high praise. The second to last book I have is The Final Offer, and this is by Lauren. What's her last name? I cannot remember. Anyway, this is the last book in the Dreamland Billionaire series, and it is one that I was really looking forward to because it was a lot of people's favorites. However, I still stand on the fact that the second one is my favorite. I loved that one the most, but I did really enjoy this one and I gave this 4 stars. This has major addiction triggers, alcohol, so go in there knowing that it definitely has open door spy scenes, so do not read it if that is an issue for you, but I do think that the plot is the main focus, and I don't feel like there was a lot of those scenes. I loved this one. I love Cal's character. I loved the female main character. And I really liked how this wrapped up the 3 brothers and just really enjoyed it and thought it was a great end to the series. And I can't wait to get into the rest of the Lakefront Billionaire series. But again, I highly recommend it. And oh, Lauren Asher is her name, Lauren Asher. So I do highly recommend reading it. The first one, didn't like at all the fine print, but the other 2 were really great. And so lastly, I don't know where my book, hold on. Saving 6. I saved the best for last because, guys, let me just tell you, I love this series so much. I don't know why it took me so long to get back into this series, but oh my gosh, guys, how much did I love this series? I have 2 more left. This is the 3rd one, and this is following Joey. I cannot talk too much about it because it is the 3rd in the series, but this is such a raw story. Effie, I think is how you say her name, the female main character, adore her. I adore Effie. I adore her. She is now one of my top female main characters ever. I love her so much. So much. She is so good to Joey. She is so strong and so bold and just everything that he needed and more in this book. I have highlighted so much in this story. I do not tab or highlight in my physical copies. Maybe that will change for me in the future, but currently I just don't like to mark them up. I really just don't. I like to keep them clean. I love to highlight on the Kindle books because it is so easy to just transfer those to Goodreads and not have to mark up my pretty books that I love. So I do have like 1,000,001 highlights of that will be posted on Goodreads that you can check out. I will say there's a lot of language in this book. Some of the quotes I have do have language, but the rest of the quote was so beautiful I couldn't not highlight it, so I do apologize for that. There's gonna be some cussing in some of them. I don't cuss personally, so please do not be offended when you're reading the quotes. But I just love this one. Again, this series, do not go in there lightly, knowing all the triggers, major abuse triggers, major DASA. There is major addiction triggers in this one. There's just a lot. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of triggers because it is following a very sad story of children growing up in a really sad situation mixed in with a love story. So as you can imagine, that can get pretty deep and pretty dark really quick, but I think she does it in such a tasteful way. And I really love that she adds in humor throughout her stories that kind of gives you a reprieve from all of the sad stuff because I think that makes it more tolerable. But again, I am here for every single thing on these pages. This series is like my entire personality now. I never experienced this in my life whatsoever, so do not hear me wrong. I have never experienced anything like these people in this book, nothing even close. So that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by like these books are my entire personality is just that these characters feel like my family members. Like I love them so incredibly much. I feel like I know these characters. I feel like they're my family. And I'm just rooting for them and I love them so much. There is not a character in these books that I don't like except for the obvious one. If everyone knows what I mean, there's not a single one that I don't like. I just love them so very much and I can't believe that there's only 2 more after this because I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like there really isn't a series like this. There really just isn't. There is not a single series like this that I know of. If you know of one, let me know because I don't know what I'm going to do when it's over. Like I just don't that's how real they feel to me. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do when it's over. So I think that's it. Let me make sure. Did I go over everything? Yeah, I went over everything. So I believe that is all that is there. I hope that I'm not forgetting something. I feel like I'm possibly forgetting like one book, but for the life of me, I don't know what it is. So maybe I've just imagined that up, because I could have swore I read 19 books, but I'm only seeing 18 on here. So if I'm wrong, I will insert a picture here of a book that I may have missed and the rating, and I apologize. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this wrap up. I really encourage you to try some of these books out, especially Promise Me Sunshine. Again, knowing the triggers, but that was probably one of the biggest ones that I recommended to people. I don't recommend this series to people only because of the dark content in it, so I can't really recommend it, because I mean, there is a lot of language and stuff in here that I just think, ugh, you know? So I don't, but I obviously love it with my whole heart. So like, I can't say I don't love it, but I have to say I can't really recommend it based on some of the triggers and talk in here. So anyway, that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you have been able to find a book that you're interested in. And in the comments below, please leave a book that you gave 5 stars to this last month that you loved. And until next time, friends, remember to read what inspires you. Bye!